The pot was burning and bubbling, but there was no fire under it. I stood frozen, staring at the strange sight before me. The steam rising from the clay pot twisted unnaturally, like it was alive, carrying a smell so delicious that it made my stomach ache. Someone asked, in a loud voice, "Where is the firewood?" But I already knew the answer. There was no firewood. The hearth was bare, cold as the evening breeze that slipped through the cracks in the walls. Then I saw him, Samuel, the chef everyone adored. His handsome face was calm, a knowing smile tugging at his lips as he wiped sweat from his brow with a cloth. Samuel was so handsome that every girl had a crush on him. For a moment, I thought I saw steam rising from his body. And then Adeabi shouted with her small and clear voice, "He cooks it, with the heat in his armpit." Gasps filled the room. A few people laughed nervously, brushing her words off as the wild imagination of a child. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was right. The hair on my arm stood on end as I glanced at Samuel. His smile didn't falter me at all. For me, I didn't know it then, but that was the night everything in our village changed. Adeabi's words hung in the air like the sharp smell of burnt oil. At first, there was silence, just the bubbling pot and the faint crackle of steam escaping from the mouth of the pot. Then, an elderly voice came from the back of the room. "Children and their wild imaginations," Samuel said. He wiped his hands on the white apron tied around his waist. "Adeabi, you've been listening to too many folktales," Samuel replied. The crowd laughed, saying Adeabi is just playing as a kid. After all, this was Sam, the village's most beloved chef. The man whose food made even the hardest heart soften. People flocked to his restaurant every day, lining up before sunrise just to taste his perfectly cooked yam porridge, egusi soup, and jollof rice. They called him the master chef. But I wasn't laughing. I couldn't stop staring at the pot, at the unnatural way it bubbled. I always helped my mother cook enough times, and I know how fire worked, how heat rose from flames to warm a pot. But this was different. "Samuel," I found myself saying, my voice louder than I intended. "How is the food cooking without fire?" The room fell quiet again. All eyes turned to me, including his. For a moment, his gaze was sharp, like a knife slicing through my skin. But then he smiled, with his handsome face and white teeth. "Oh, Easter," he said, addressing me by my name. "You're curious, aren't you? Always asking questions," he said, stepping closer to the pot. "I use a special technique. A chef's secret. You won't understand how these things work." The crowd murmured appreciatively, nodding. Of course, Sam would have a secret. That's what made him great. But Adeabi wasn't convinced. "Show us," Adeabi shouted. Her small voice was almost lost in the crowd. "Show us how you cook without fire," she insisted. The murmurs turned into whispers. People glanced at each other, but come to think of it, it was one thing to enjoy Sam's food, but nobody ever asked how it was made. Sam's smile faltered for just a second, but he recovered quickly. "Adeabi, cooking is an art. You don't reveal all your secrets." He crashed down to her level, with his gentle tone. "Why don't you go sit down? Your food will be ready soon." But Adeobi didn't move. With her large eyes, dark and unblinking, seemed to pierce through him. "You're hiding something," she said. A nervous laugh rippled through the crowd, but it didn't reach her. Or me. As the evening wore on, the tension in the room slowly eased. People returned to their seats, their hunger overpowering their curiosity. Plates were filled, and the sound of chewing replaced the earlier whispers. I sat at a corner table, watching Sam move between the kitchen and the dining area. His movement was not as strong as it used to be. I tried to shake off the unease, but Adeobi's words keep ringing in my mind. The way she said them, so certain, so final, made it impossible to forget. When Sam brought my plate, I hesitated. The steaming plate of jollof rice looked perfect, the colors was vibrant, the aroma was intoxicating. But as I lifted my spoon, a strange image flashed in my mind. Sam, sweating, his armpit dripping into the pot. I dropped the spoon, my appetite was gone. "Are you not hungry?" Sam asked. I forced myself to smile. And I responded, "I'm just tired because I have been waiting for long." Sam nodded and walked away. The first crack in Sam's perfect image appeared 2 weeks later. It was a cool evening, the kind where the harmattan breeze carried the smell of dust and dry leaves. I was walking home from my uncle's farm when I heard voices near Sam's restaurant. Curious, I drew closer, hiding behind a tree. 2 men were arguing in low voices. One of them was pointing at the restaurant, with his angry voice. "He doesn't buy firewood. Not even charcoal," the man said. "And yet his pots boil every day. Does that not strike you as odd?" "Maybe he buys it in secret," the other replied. "Secret? When? How? I live next door to him, and I've never seen it. Not even for once." Their voices faded as they walked away, but their words stayed with me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the thatched roof above me, replaying everything I'd seen and heard. The pot without fire. Adeobi's accusation. The men's argument. Something wasn't right. But I have no proof to accuse him. It happened on a market day. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the crowded village square. Traders called out their prices, their voices competing with the sound of chickens squawking and children laughing. The air was thick with the smell of roasted corn, dried fish, and palm oil. Sam's restaurant, as always, was the busiest spot. A long line snaked out of the entrance, stretching past the plantain sellers and the basket weavers. People argued over who was next, their hunger making them impatient. Inside, the scene was no different. Plates clattered, spoons scraped against bowls, and laughter echoed as customers enjoyed their meals. But inside the noise, Adeobi was in the restaurant too. She sat quietly in the corner. She hadn't touched her food. I was sitting a few tables away, watching her. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on Samuel as he moved between the kitchen and the dining area. She seemed tense, like she was waiting for something. "Samuel," she called suddenly, her voice cutting through the noise. He turned, his ever-present smile lighting up his face. "Yes, Adeobi." Is everything okay with your food? Sam asked. She stood up with courage and voice out. I want to see how you cook it today. The restaurant fell silent. All eyes turned to her, then to Sam. His smile faltered, but only for a moment. Adeobi, we've been through this before. A chef doesn't reveal his secrets. But you don't use fire, she said. You use something else. My people. Please, if you are enjoying the story, don't forget to subscribe, like and drop your comment on the comment section. Long before Samuel became the celebrated chef in a Umofia village in Abakaliki, Samuel was just a boy trying to survive. His family was poor. So poor that most days they went to bed with empty stomachs. His father was a struggling palm wine tapper, died when Samuel was young, leaving his mother to care for him and his two younger siblings. Samuel loved to cook. It was the only time he felt in control, the only time he could create something that brought happiness, even if just for a moment. But food was scarce, and without ingredients, his dream of becoming a great chef felt impossible. One fateful night, as he wandered the forest searching for a leftover yams in People Farm, he came across a strange figure. The figure looked somehow like a man and somehow like a god's. His skin was as dark as coal and his eyes were shining like a dragon. You seek greatness, the figure said. Samuel was too desperate to question the strange man. I can give you what you want, the man said. But it will come at a price. The man explained the deal. Samuel would receive the gift of heat, a fire within his body that would make him the best chef in the land. His food would be irresistible, his fame will be unshakable. But he must never reveal his secret, and the fire would grow stronger with each meal cooked, consuming a part of him in the process. Desperate and blinded by ambition, the poor boy agreed without thinking twice. So back in the restaurant, Adeobi's unwavering stare was like a blade slicing through Sam's composure. That's not the whole truth, she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. The pot on the hearth began to bubble more violently, more than it supposed. Samuel, I called out, because I was unable to stay silent any longer. What is she talking about? He ignored me, his focus entirely was on Adeobi. You don't understand what you're saying, child, he said. Adeobi took a step closer to the pot. You made a deal, didn't you? With something not of this world. The crowd gasped, Samuel's face grew with anger and desperation. Enough, he roared, his voice booming. You don't know what it's like to starve. You don't know what it's like to watch your family suffer. His words silenced everyone. I did what I had to do, he continued, but his tone was softer now that he was almost pleading. This gift saved me. It saved my family. Adeobi shook her head. It's not a gift. It's a curse. As she spoke, the pot began to hiss, the steam rising and twisting into unnatural shapes. The crowd backed away, their fear turning into panic. What is happening? Someone whispered. Adeobi didn't flinch. You broke the rules of the deal, Samuel. You've been exposed. The pot boiled over, the liquid spilling onto the ground, sizzling as it touched the cold floor. In the steam, a face began to form. Twisted with anger and its glowing red eyes locked onto Samuel. The crowd screamed, some running to the door, others climbing the table shouting. Samoa fell to his knees, with his hands clutching his head. "No. Please. I didn't mean to," he cried out. The face in the steam opened its mouth, and though no sound came out, the message was clear. The deal was over. That night, Samoa disappeared. Some say he was taken by the spirit he had made the deal with, down to the otherworldly realm where he borrowed his power from. Others believe he fled, unable to face the shame and fear of the villagers. The restaurant was abandoned, its once bustling walls now silent and empty. Over time, the village moved on, but the story of Samoa's secret lived on as a warning about the dangers of ambition and the price of forbidden deals. As for Adeabi, she became something of a hero in Abakaliki. Her gift of vision was no longer seen as strange but as a blessing. People often came to her seeking answers, but she rarely spoke of that day. I still think about Samoa sometimes. About the desperation in his eyes, the way he fought so hard to rise above his circumstances only to fall so much further. His food may have been the sweetest, but his story was bitter. And every time I smell yam porridge, I remember Samoa. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this.